We can read it,
We're
right?
live. Welcome everyone. Meeting of Senate Rules Committee, the first meeting, and welcome new membership. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We have two quick orders of business. I believe they'll be quick. The first is putting a bow on the rule that we passed around remote participation in committees. What we passed requires that the Rules Committee okay the procedures that we're going to use. So I'll turn it to the Senate Secretary to describe those procedures, and then we'll have a vote.
So I'll try to make this straightforward. Generally speaking, when you first, the first day on Wednesday, you came back and you passed a number of resolutions. SR1 basically did the permanent rules along with some amendments. SR2 allowed there to be remote participation on the floor for COVID related, waiting for testing. SR3, I got those in the right order, allowed the committees to be remote as you guys decided. That's what we've been doing for like 2 or 3 terms. And what has generally happened is by that rule 32A, I have copies if you want to look through it, basically says you can set the parameters for how those remote committee meetings occur. And you're supposed to include as much as possible 9A, and 9A is the ones on the floor. So it's things like you have to be seen to vote, you have to be audio, you're supposed to be from your district, the same kind of rules here. And then what has happened in the past couple of terms, the Rules Committee has said we're going to do all of that, and then the committees, if someone wants to participate remotely, it's in the chair's discretion as to whether they can or cannot. And so my suggestion would be that there's a motion to kind of do what you've done the last couple terms, which is incorporate 9A along with the ability for the chair to decide if people are remote. And you're just effectuating that SR3 by having the Rules Committee set the ground rules for the remote committees.
Okay.
If that makes sense to everyone.
Yep, that makes sense.
If that's the case, what would the motion look like, John?
I think what we will do, we can do it 2 ways, Senator, but I guess the easiest way is the Senate Rules Committee approves committee meetings pursuant to the requirements of Rule 9A, along with participation as determined appropriately by the chair.
So moved.
Second it. Do we second in here?
I don't think it needs one.
Good.
but
Okay, I don't need to second.
Retraction.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah. Hey, Senator, there's a
I have
question.
a question.
I'm just, I mean, we have had a little bit of a scare in the Senate about maybe several people being sick at once. Are there any provisions for whether or not a quorum of the committee have to be physically present to proceed?
So under Rule 9A, it's the same as with the Senate. You could all be remote
Okay,
under a state of emergency, and so it's you're entitled to count, and it's really the discretion of the chair. If the chair says you have to be in person, you have to be in person, but if the chair has to treat everybody equally, but if the chair says that you have an ability to participate remotely, then you count for the quorum, you count as voting.
okay.
Okay.
Good question.
Further discussion? Hearing none, Senate Secretary call the roll.
Fair enough.
Let's just do it on a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so it passes unanimously as far as I can. So our second order of business is a little more complicated, but not too much. So as you know, we have a huge job ahead of us in terms of education, finance, and system reform. We had a meeting, the speaker and I and others, with Ledge Council. They were expressing anxiety about the size and the scope of the task. They made one request that I think is very reasonable. In the House, people are allowed to use short form bills. In the Senate, we don't do short form bills. They asked if for this year, we could allow short form bills in the education space if a chooses to have a short form bill. So it wouldn't require that a senator's bill request be short form, but it would allow, if senators wanted to help pledge council manage their time, a senator could put in a short form bill, which would essentially be the title of the bill, the purpose of the bill, to be developed later if a committee chair was going to take it up. So it's a way, I believe, that we could show we understand their resource problem this session, but it wouldn't take away any senator's right to have a full form bill if they choose. So with that, I'll ask the Senate Secretary to show you the resolution that he's drafted, and we can have his explanation of same.
So we're going to put up on the share screen from Melissa for those who are sort of following at home, but I thought it might be easier if you all could see it up and close and personal. So there's a
Thank
a
you.
copy. Generally it starts off with a few whereas clauses to make sure that, well, historically the Senate has not allowed short form bills. So this is kind of an unusual step. It's establishing a temporary, it's 2 copies, sorry, Senator. It's
Okay.
setting up a temporary rule to allow short form bills only for education, financing, and reform, because it's sort of a unique year. And so there's short forms would not be allowed under for any other purposes or any other types of topics. And this is sort of narrowly drawn, or hopefully narrowly drawn, so that it only applies to education and or financing. You'll note that there's an expiration date at the very last part, which talks about May 1st, 2025. We thought about doing it earlier because there's always a crossover issue, but May 1st, if you haven't passed a bill or put one in by May 1st, it's probably not passing this year anyways on a short form. The whereas clauses try to be as general as possible. We don't always do resolutions with whereas clauses, but the reason those were in there is to, for the future, if they look at it, they'll know it was a unique circumstance rather than something that's done typically frequently in the Senate. The rest of the provisions, A, B, C, and D, talk about that a senator can request a short form for these finance, education, reform, and finance. They can, then explained by B, I will be honest, don't tell anybody in the House, like we stole a lot of this language for what happens in the House because they have these short form bills. We do not. And so B and C come really from sort of the House, way the House deals with the short form bills, that a short form bill will have to have a name, topic, etc. And then the third paragraph, C, and that's in there because if you introduce a short form bill, nobody knows the contents. And so if you're in the House when you introduce a short form bill, it comes out of committee with the body or standard form. And if that's the first time you've seen it, that may not be enough notice. So the idea here is the way the House rule works, it goes on notice for 2 days. That's why this provision's here. It comes from their rule. I'm forgetting, but there is a rule from the House that talks about 2 days. It would not require 2 days if it goes to finance or appropriations, because then it'll be a second day anyways.
Right.
And so this would be if a bill came directly out, it would go on notice for 2 days. The House has one other provision we did not include, and that basically says that if a bill is made from a short form to a standard form, it takes the majority of the committee to request it. Well, generally, that happens anyways. If the committee's going to vote out the bill, it has to be by a majority. And so we just thought that was redundant and we didn't include it, tried to streamline it as much as possible. So the idea is the senator or the pro tem, the chair was talking, is to try to accommodate some requests. No senator would be restricted and required to do a short form. This is only if at your option, if you or the other member or other senators wanted to, they could request a short form, but it is not required. Yes.
So there's some language, there's some flowery language about the importance of our education finance conversation. I'm generally fine with it. I think there's a typo in the second whereas. Therefore, unless that's more like Middle English speak.
So
What are we doing?
We've got a roundabout
Okay.
About this particularly. Therefore, we had actually the pro tem review this, and he kind of asked us whether it should be the same or should be different. Then we were told that maybe it should be different, and so we went out We can put it in either way. We
Oh,
did-
gosh,
we were
I didn't
done-
want
No, it's
to
fine.
tip
No, we
the
had-
scales.
We basically went and looked it up, and it has something to do with adverbs and non-adverbs and.
Wow, I'll pass this
deferred-
around.
Oh,
we
good,
deferred-
I want, that, we should give that to the Senate Pro Tem or the secretary, because it may be a question on the floor. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So we,
We'll let the professor of English answer.
That's
that.
what we
Yes.
did.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
We just looked up to substantiate it, and if you look there, it has something. I think
It's so funny because I think it's the first therefore. I think it's the one with the E because as a result, it's led to an increase of tech.
We'll do either one.
I don't know,
but
look
we-
at it.
We just, we did
This
address.
is not how I
that.
want to spend my lunch hour, so I'm sorry for.
What does this one mean? What is this one? Oh, it's, oh, okay.
So without an E,
Wow.
we're passing around. With the E is sort of legal, we always use the therefore with an E when we do a resolves. And so
Right.
we would prefer to leave that E on there. On the second one, we have, to be really honest with you, Senators, we don't always put whereases in when we do rules. We just put them in this time. If you decided as a group to strike them, we just put them in as a way of saying this is unique for just education and finance.
This is exciting.
Melissa, could you stop sharing so I can see folks again?
I didn't hear.
Very good. Yes, Senator Ron Hinsdale, I had the same question, and it seems, having looked through it, that they're actually both used correctly.
I'll agree. I'll acquiesce for now. I also, I actually just want to say for the record, I'm driven nuts by short form bills from the House side. I am glad it's not an official practice of ours to allow them because I also think it's confusing to convey to the public or advocates what they mean. So I just, as long as someone else is explaining whatever value they might have, they also don't have co-sponsors is what I'm seeing from here.
I believe this language came from the House. I believe the House allows co-sponsors.
They do.
We would not
Okay.
kick it out. Yeah. There are various reasons people have bills. If somebody sent up a bill that was short form and it had multiple sponsors, we would not reject the bill from the Senate Secretary's office.
Okay.
And if I could just say, primarily, this is designed to potentially ease the workload
Yes.
in terms of drafting, because Ledge Council was concerned that maybe 5 or 6 separate senators would ask for very, very long, detailed bills that required all sorts of financial projections, et cetera. They still have the option to produce that, but what Ledge Council will do is, if there's a drafting request in the education space, they will suggest that this is a possibility if the senator is comfortable. And whether or not it will actually ease their workload, it is an attempt to address their anxieties about the workload as well as potentially really affecting it.
So if I could ask the committee chair, is there any likelihood, in your opinion, that there'll be more than one senator that does this? Is this sort of, I'm probably not using the correct terminology, like a relief valve if at
Can
some point we
correspond.
don't have something else? Or is there a likelihood or potential that 5 or 6 senators will say, hey, that's a great idea, I think I'll do that? I don't know the answer to it, and you probably don't either, but was that sort of thought about?
Yeah, I tend to think that people will ask for long form bills,
Okay.
even after they're offered the option of a short form. But if somebody is, I guess the way I think it might be helpful is if somebody was going to Ledge Council and saying, I want a bill that replaces the entire education system, and they offer a couple of guiding ideas, but don't really have an interest in it beyond that, maybe it's enough for them to show their constituents a short form that they put in a bill that suggests this approach, as opposed to a fully articulated 100-page bill that their constituents might not read through anyway. So again, whether it will have, we don't know. Will it have positive effects on the workload? It advertising their issue, which is they're gonna have to be drafting, almost the entirety of Title 16 in order to change the education finance system. So, this is a way to speak to their workload issue.
You have another question, Senator?
I may have missed this while I was reading it and you were speaking, but I just want to clarify, they don't have to do this. A senator does not have to do this. This is a offering, we are, on behalf of Ledge Council's workload that we are, yes, so it's a may. So there, I'm just anticipating how much debate there might be on this, on the floor, but that should be a little bit easier for people to swallow, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would stress on the floor that it is an option. And I will ask that senators consider it, given workload considerations, but if they choose not to do short form, they can certainly request it. One of the realities is that it may be a while for Ledge Council to get to education bills this session because both chambers and the administration are working on changing the entire title. So it's a way to accomplish something if the senators so choose.
Let's just hope people don't parse each word, but I think it's worthy of doing. I move that we approve this
We have a
resolution.
motion, Senator, on the floor from the Senator from Chittenden. She moved the resolution.
I thank you for that motion. Is there further
Second.
discussion?
Second.
We have a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You say
All those
aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Was that an aye or a nay?
It was a late aye for approve.
Sorry.
You have a 5-0, Senator.
5-0 it is. Is there any further business? I do have a meeting in the governor's office at noon. So unless there's urgent further business, I'll declare the meeting adjourned.